Jai Hind Doston, I am Major Mohammed Ali Shah, and today I feel extremely happy and I feel elated, in fact, to have somebody with us who we all know. We all have watched him and we all have enjoyed watching him perform. But in his performances, a lot of element of truth comes along. But there are certain aspects of Papa CJ, one of our favorite comedians and executive coach, who we may not be aware of perhaps so far. Hopefully, I plan to bring out those aspects. Well, let me tell you, though he needs no introduction, but let me tell you that he did his schooling from the second best school of the world. Well, why I say second best? Why I say second best?
Major, it's too early in the conversation for you to let out your insecurities, but carry on.
Why I say second best is because he went to a brilliant school, one of the best schools of India, no doubt, Lawrence School, Sanar, where the motto is never give in. And that is my sister's school. Incidentally, I went to Lawrence School, Lovedale, Papa.
For starters, sir, please call me CJ and not Papa.
I was hoping, I was expecting for that answer to come. I said, our viewers, no. He really actually, I have watched so many of his videos, read up so much of him, that by now, you see the doctor written off my name over there? That is because of me doing a thesis on CJ. So after that, anyway, after Sanar, he went to he came to the Hindu college. Thereafter, he was so much into so many extracurriculars. See, being the head boy of being a Laurentian myself, though they don't call themselves Laurentians, they call themselves Sanarians. So, being a Laurentian myself, I can tell you that head boy is something very, very prestigious, especially in Lawrence School. And we are a band obsessed school. There's Lawrence School, Sanar, and Lapil. There's a lot of parade and the traditional same military traditions. He came to the Hindu college. He was active in extracurricular. Thereafter, he did by correspondence. And thereafter, he went, any guesses, anyone? He went to the Oxford University to do an MBA.
It was a mistake, It was a mistake by the university. Galti se admission de diya. They don't exactly put me on the brochure. They're not saying, come do an MBA at Oxford University. You can be a comedian one day.
So after that, he was a consultant in UK, in London for a few years. Then he came to, after that, let me tell you, a turning point happened in CJ's life. Yes. In 2004, he gave up his corporate career. After attending the Edinburgh Film Festival, he gave up his corporate career and took up to the stage professionally full time. In the early 2008, he returned to India. And we all know, rest of history, he's performed in 5 continents. And he's performed all over the world.
I should rephrase a part of that introduction. I think my corporate career gave up on me long before I gave up on my corporate career.
Good one. And before I go ahead and talk more, I can just go on endlessly speaking about CJ. I can go on speaking. So let's hand over the mic to CJ. And CJ, first tell us about your early childhood. We all know that you were head boy at Sanar. But tell me, when you went to the boarding school the first day, how was it like for you and the first day in your boarding school?
I think I had gone my parents had taken me to visit the school before I had joined. And it looked like a wonderful place. And, as an only child, so I grew up, my father worked for a tea company. The head office was in Calcutta. I lived in a building with 180 flats. And even though I was an only child, we always had other children to play with. You would go down in the evening, you would play with friends. So I think I settled in quite well into boarding school because you immediately found so many other kids your own age. And with boarding school, I find that either you fit in or you don't. There's rarely an in-between. And luckily for me, I adapted quite quick. So in fact, my father still has a file of all the letters I ever wrote from boarding school, right from the age of 9, which he's got. And I don't think I was really unhappy at any point in school.
Right. And were you always in school, were you a debater, into plays, and cracking jokes to your friends and such things?
So I was never a debater. I
Okay.
acted in school plays. Uh, I used to be very fit. So I could do 100 meters in 12 seconds, but I could also do 3 kilometers in 10 and a half minutes. And I had above average hand eye coordination. I wasn't very skilled, but I would say maybe a 6 or a 7 on 10. But on sheer fitness, I used to make every school team. So cricket, football, hockey, athletics. I used to box, not particularly well. I played chess. So I think in school also, because we were on a mountaintop where we were exposed to all these things and we had the opportunity, unlike a day school where maybe, a parent has to take you for some class or to some field, here we had it all. And as a result, I absolutely love school. I thrived. I enjoyed playing almost every sport. And while I was a bright kid, you'll know this, in boarding school, academics aren't cool. It's cool to play sport. So that's something I was always drawn to. But
Right.
debating, no, I could never. Any activity that required speaking sense, no. Acting in plays, doing that stuff, yes.
So you were an outstanding sportsman. You were very good in extracurricular. How were you in studies, CJ?
Actually, I was, and I don't want to sound cocky or cocksure. I was very bright. I didn't
Okay.
put in a lot of work, but I was very bright. So, I mean, I came first in class, except for class five, every other year. But a lot of it was without trying. But I was also very mischievous. I remember we had an English teacher called Mr. Abraham. And when I joined his class, I think it was class 10, he made me sit in the back of the room. He said, you are the mastermind behind all the operations. You finish your work in 15 minutes, and then you get all these other guys into trouble. So I was a naughty kid, but I was also good at academics and sports and things like and extracurriculars. So while the teachers wanted to sort of catch me out in something, they couldn't, because I always sort of had my work completed.
Were you in the school band as well? Because
Yes.
both the Lawrence schools are band obsessed schools completely.
Yeah, so I was in the bugle band for the tattoo at night, but I was also a part of the actual band. I played the clarinet for 6 years in the school band.
I play the carry as well, yeah. The B
Oh,
flat clarinet or
B
the
flat.
B flat. Oh God,
Yeah.
wow! I have a clarinet with me. In fact, right now, I wish I had got it with me.
Ah,
So that is a failure on my part. While doing my research on you, I wish I had known this aspect of your B flat clarinet. I would have
but
kept my clarinet ready with me.
but here's the thing, I wish we were taught a little bit better, because when we played the clarinet, they didn't teach us how to read music. I don't know if they taught you how to read music. So we had the
Alphabets,
notes. Yeah, we had the
alphabets.
notes written for us, and you could play them. But I was never taught to read music.
Same here. But we have a lot in common. Bugle band,
Yeah,
clarinet, and then I graduated on to saxophone. So I was sax as well with me. So
nice,
that's something I learned music subsequently thereafter in the army.
super.
All right. So tell me, as a head boy of
Yeah,
Lawrence R, batch of 95, it's a lot of authority. And with a
yeah,
lot of authority comes a lot of responsibility. With a lot of responsibility comes a lot of authority as well. How
yeah.
was it being the head boy and, of course, being an all rounded student that you were?
Um, I mean, it's hard to really remember, but I think I enjoyed it. I mean, right from day one, I had a lot of school spirit. I had a lot of house spirit. I was very actively involved in all the activities. So I think I enjoyed the responsibility. But also, what happened is that I think one theme of life, and you've read my book, so you will know this, all the way through, have been two things. One is I've always been the outsider. I've never fit, as somebody who goes to a boarding school, you can fit in anywhere, but you don't necessarily belong. I know you'll know the difference. But the other thing was, I have always had issues with authority, especially when that authority is not justified or it is something that I don't respect. So, as head boy, I always stood up for my students. I stood up for the kids, I wasn't necessarily always the favorite of all the teachers because uh, I would question if they gave me an instruction that I didn't believe was fair or right. Just a blatant, because I said so, because I'm the teacher. But it's got to make sense. Is it fair? Is it right? Is it? I mean, I'm no majorly righteous person, but I always kind of, at least I'd like to think so, stood up for the kids. But that's probably just my own biased opinion.
Right. And having spoken about your book, The Naked, in fact, that's a book I recommend to everyone, every single person. It is available online, it's available in your nearest bookstore. It was published in 2019, and it's a fabulous book. We will come to that. We will discuss that as well. But before that, after Sanar, you came to Delhi, went to the Hindu college,
Yeah.
and thereafter you decided to do by correspondence. So, what
Yes.
is the shift that made you do it by through correspondence, CJ?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. So when I was in class 12, I don't know if you remember this, the plague had come apparently.
Surat.
So our school got shut down. So for the last 6 months, we were sent away. And this was, while I was head boy, class 12. So as a result, I never studied for my board exams. So I remember my maths board exam, I studied for 3 days. And I got an average of 76%. And even though I had this thick file of certificates for sports, extracurriculars, etc., all they wanted to see was that class 12 mark sheet. So I started going for sports trials, and eventually I got into Hindu through sports quota. And they said you can take any course you want except BCom and Eco. Now, unfortunately, one of the downsides of boarding school at that point is that we weren't really exposed to the different kinds of courses and what was going on. In hindsight, if I could do it again, I would have taken psychology. But in those days, it was fashionable to take science. We were always told if you take science, you can keep your options open. If you take science, from science, you can move to commerce. If you take commerce, from commerce, you can move to arts. But if you choose arts, you can't move to science. That was the. So I took BSc honors electronics, and I went into this class. I remember the first day I went to class, and I had the lowest marks in class, which was 76%. I think the second lowest at that point was 89 or 90 or something. And people were reading books like Physics is Fun. And that was the only class I attended at Hindu college. And I decided that this was not for me. So also at this point, my parents, my father was going to move from Calcutta to Delhi. But that move did not happen. So I decided that I wanted to spend some time with my family. I had spent 9 years in a boarding school. So I moved to a correspondence course. I took a BCom honors course. So I used to go back to Calcutta, live with my folks, and then come to Delhi and give the exams here. So that's what led me. Two things led me to pull out of Hindu college. One, I wanted to spend more time with my family. And two, there's not a chance in hell I would have survived BSc honors electronics.
So after BSc, as you said, you couldn't have survived BSc electronics. I think you could have. I think you really are. You're a very intelligent person, and by seeing so many of your videos, there's a lot of wit, humor, and a lot of intelligence in what you speak, CJ. So tell me us about your entry to Oxford. Thereafter, you went and did your MBA from Oxford. How was the experience at Oxford and your stay over there?
So let me give you the background to that. First, I started in the BCom honors. And then in those days, what do you do? A BCom isn't enough to get you a job anywhere, right? And my dad doesn't have a business. He worked for one tea company for 35 years. So what else do you do? I did a sales and marketing course. And then I said, okay, chartered accountancy is what you do when you do BCom. So I gave the CA foundation exam. I got an all India rank. I was 45th all India in that exam. And then I started doing these inter examinations, and it was just, I couldn't hack it. It was so boring, and a lot of the content was so outdated. So the MBA was my way out. In fact, in second year college, I almost failed second year college because in the middle of the exams, my friend Parakram and I decided we would go and play golf. And where would we go and play golf? To Shimla. He was madly keen to go. So we flipped a coin. I won, and we went to Shimla. So as a result, I failed 2 subjects and I got exactly 40%. So had I got half a mark less, I would have to repeat the year. My friend was not as as fortunate, and he had to repeat that that year of college. Mind you, he was school captain of another very prestigious boarding school. So then I decided the MBA was the way out. So I gave the GMAT exam. I also gave half my second year papers again along with my third year. I got an average of 30% more in each of them, so that took up the thing. Got a first division, got a high GMAT score, and when I got into Oxford, I mean, I was the youngest MBA on the program, but they didn't want to give me admission. I was 22. So they gave me deferred admission, and I bluffed. I told them, listen, I've got admission into these other colleges. So if you don't give it to me now, I'm going there. And 3 hours later, I got an email from them saying the admissions committee met and has decided to offer you admission this year. So that's how I ended up getting into Oxford. Oxford, to be honest, it was a stressful experience. It wasn't as enjoyable as Oxford University should be, because when you do an undergrad program, you have 3 10-week terms. There are like 10 parties a weekend to choose from, because each college has 2 parties a term. There are 40 colleges, or 8 parties a weekend. I was doing a master's course, 1 year's master's course. They give you more work than is humanly possible. I also had a loan of 30,000 pounds. Now, keep in mind that my father started work on 825 rupees a month. And had I not landed a job in the UK, it would have been impossible. It would have taken me 20 years to pay back that loan. I did more job applications than my entire course put together. The day I got a rejection letter, I would reapply to the same company. Sometimes their systems weren't in sync, I would get the interview. But in those days, to hire a non-European Union citizen, you had to show that that person and nobody else in the EU could do that job. So getting a work permit was really tough as well. But then somehow I did manage to land a job. So that's kind of it's a long answer to your short question as to how I got through the MBA course and then eventually landed a job in London.
Right. Thereafter, in London, when you were a management consultant for a couple of years, how
Yeah,
was your stint? Were you getting job satisfaction out of it? There was
terrible,
good money, of course.
terrible. Well, good. I was the lowest paid person of my entire MBA class, but then I had very little experience as well. It was absolutely terrible. I joined IBM uh, in December 2000. 6th of December 2000 was my first day on the job. I was a 23-year-old MBA, not enough experience, and this is when that dot-com crash happened. So
Ah,
within 1 year, all my MBA classmates had lost their jobs or moved somewhere else. But because IBM was a large company, over the course of 3 years, I had 6 different jobs. Each time one team would start getting fired, I would get a job somewhere else internally. So I did a job in management consulting. There was a communications role. There was a business process role, which is thoroughly boring. Then I took a job in a research department for one day. I went there, I remember, at 9 o'clock in the morning. I walked into a room which had 6 people who had probably never spoken to another human being outside that room in 15 years. And my boss came in at 10 o'clock, and I went to him and I said, I think there's been a mistake. I still remember his name was Bill Harmer. He said, do you realize that if you don't accept this job, there are very few jobs out there. You could lose your job. As a result, you will lose your work permit and you will have to go back to India. I said, I realize that, but if I stay in this job, I will lose my life and my sanity. So I took my chances and landed something else internally. And
right.
yeah, so
So when you quit
so
your
no,
job in
it
2004, after doing the Edinburgh Film Festival, obviously that had nothing to do with you quitting your job. And after the film festival, you always had in your mind that, "Nahi yaar, Mata nahi aa raha, I'm not really enjoying my job. I have to quit my job ultimately and
so
start on
it
my
it
own."
it wasn't that major. I mean, I don't come from the kind of financial background where you have the luxury to take those decisions, right? What happened in 2004 was that one of the things I used to do was I used to help with MBA recruitment. So I got to know a few of the HR partners. I figured out that HR was giving out to a select few people sabbaticals where you could take 1 year off on 35% pay and still have the job waiting for you when you came back. So I went to my boss at the time, said, listen, I want to take this sabbatical. He said, oh, no, you can't. It's a small business unit. So I convinced him of the idea, and both of us took a sabbatical. So it was in that year that I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I saw somebody doing stand up. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I have to try it. So I started doing stand up then. Then I came back to the day job. At that point, I figured out that they were giving you packages, severance packages to leave the company. So then I took a severance package to leave the company and started doing stand up full time.
So, you saw someone doing stand up over there.
Yeah.
And today, youngsters would see you and they would get inspired and they would be like, I want to be like Papa CJ. So,
Yeah.
what do you have to say to those youngsters who get inspired watching you the way you were inspired by watching somebody else?
The only thing I would say to them is it's wonderful to be inspired, but you don't want to be like Papa CJ. You want to be the best version of yourself, whatever that might be. And I think that's something you learn in any artistic field. Initially, you want the confidence that you can make people laugh. But over the course of time, I mean, this is the first line in my book as well. And I think it applies to art forms beyond stand-up comedy as well. I say that stand-up comedy is an outward expression of an inward journey. So the journey is always inwards. And once you get comfortable in your own skin, in your own truth, in being who you are, your audience finds you. Because you can only be a second best Steve Jobs or Chris Rock or Jerry Seinfeld, but you can be the best Major Mohammed Ali Shah. And that's who you want to be. So to the youngsters, I would say, follow your heart, but also remember, while you want to feed the soul, you need to feed the stomach as well. I've said this many times before. Shah Rukh Khan bhi shadiyon mein nachta hai. So who are we? He's a superstar. So find that balance that allows you to meet your responsibilities while pursuing your art form and passion as well.
Very well said. When you returned back to India in the early 2008, was there a culture shock after spending so many years abroad and then coming to India? And then, of course, though you grew up in India, but you were in a boarding school, you were in sheltered portals of Lawrence Schools and Art. So how was it?
Not really a culture shock. I'm very Desi here. I'm very Indian. I've always held that love for the country whenever I've been abroad as well. I mean, the first line of stand-up I ever wrote was "Don't mess with us Indians," because we come from the land of the Kama Sutra. We can screw you in more ways than you can count. And if you see my early stand-up, when I perform in London or in the UK, I've always tried to represent India in a positive light, and stand up for the country. So no, it wasn't a culture shock at all coming back. But what was new to me was that my father had retired from his job and moved to Delhi, which is a completely different beast from Calcutta. In Calcutta, all of our fathers worked for some company or the other. You never knew who had how much money, what they did, what car they drove. It was all irrelevant. We all played the same sport. We ate at the same places. Most of the time was at home. Once in a while, you would eat out. And then suddenly I was thrown into Delhi. And as an outsider, my perception of Delhi to start with was that most people were either into business or politics. So they were either kicking somebody's ass or they were kissing somebody's ass. So when they met you, they tried to figure out where you were on that spectrum and whether they need to kick or kiss. But luckily for me, I'm not a part of that structure. It's a separate sort of thing. So I didn't
Right.
participate in that game.
You shared the stage with Russell Peters, around, we had a big following. I think it was the year 2011, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Right? And
Yeah.
so tell us about the experience about sharing your stage with Russell Peters, in fact.
It was terrible. No, I'll tell you why. Firstly, he's a wonderful guy. Wonderful guy. One of the nicest human beings I've met. Very large hearted, very helpful towards others. The show that we were doing, we were shooting a comedy special for Showtime in Amsterdam. Now, they hadn't publicized this like a regular Russell Peters show. It was a shoot. So there was an invited audience. And I still remember it was a Tuesday afternoon. Russell was hosting this series, and there were three comics on each episode. I'm first comic, first episode. Russell gets up. He tries to make these guys laugh. He's not getting a lot out of them. There was one guy in the front in the bright yellow shirt. He was kind of doing this in front of him, got nothing. Anyway, so he gets me onto stage. Now, the trick with TV is you just pretend it's going well and you pause where there should be laughter and they'll fill in the laughter later, right? The fake stuff. But it wasn't the most enjoyable show. By the time I got off, right, the team backstage had figured out that the first two rows of the audience, half the audience, did not speak any English. They were not understanding a single word of what we were saying. So by the second episode, I mean, they juggle things around. So that itself wasn't very enjoyable. But yeah, hanging out with him was nice. And he's a great guy. He's a good friend. And he's he's given me a quote for the cover of my book as well.
That's right. In the year 2014, you won the Best Stand-Up Comedian in Asia by a very renowned, the top 10 magazine, in fact. So how was it when you received this award? And you, of course, you won over 25 awards. That's a different thing. One of them, I'm just mentioning, but one of the awards was this. Yes.
You know, here's the thing, Major. All these awards are very good to put on the CV, right? It's very good for marketing purposes. It means nothing at all, right? Because it's like saying best artist, right? It's entirely subjective. It so happens that a few people who were giving that award decided that they liked my kind of work. It doesn't make you better than anybody else, you know. And I think the worst thing you can ever do is compare with other people. Each person is on their own journey. Each person is talented in their own way. Each person has an audience for his or her work. So yes, it's great to put on a poster, very good for marketing. But in terms of personally meaningful to me, there are other shows and things that are far more meaningful to me than an award that lies on a shelf.
Very well said. Very well said. Now tell us about your book. In 2019, you published your book, The Naked, and in fact, you've done a show on this as well. Well,
It
anything
used to be
about that you'd like to tell out? Yeah.
it used to be a show first. It used to be a show. Then a publisher came and saw the show and said, listen, this is a wonderful story. This needs to be a book. Major, I had zero motivation to write this book. Right? I mean, why do you write a book? Either you're writing it for the money. Now, if you've written a book, you will know this. There is no money in publishing. Or you're writing it because there's a story inside you that you're dying to tell. I was already telling my stories on stage. On a stage where you get instant gratification. You tell the story, they laugh immediately. So I had zero motivation. I did it for two reasons. One, the ego trip, right? That you sound intelligent. Oh, Papa CJ, author, right? Like your parents and family will think, "Mera beta pass ho gaya," So it is a little bit of that. It's nice to have written a book, but also jokes apart. I think what I found is, at a comedy show, you're under pressure to get to a punchline as soon as possible, right? There's an audience there. They're having a few drinks. They're not as patient. You got to give them a laugh every 15 seconds in a stand-up set. But the medium of print allows you to go deeper and share, in some ways, a richer experience for your audience because you can give them a few more layers of depth and background and story. So I think that's something that worked for me with regard to the book. And if you've read the book, you will know this. It'll feel like I'm sitting next to you and talking to you.
Yeah.
There are no long words.
Connect so well that it's like you are there and you are speaking to us.
The other thing is with that book. Sorry, I cut you off. You were saying something.
No, perfectly fine. I'm just telling you about your book. Yeah.
The other thing with the book is that with Naked, I'm using the vehicle of my life, but I'm talking about the human experience. So with every single person who's read the book, at some point when they're reading it, they're thinking, hey, wait a second, he's talking about my life. I have been through similar experiences and emotions and feelings. I remember one of the clashes I had with my editor. There was one particular chapter where she said, I don't think this chapter should be there. She said, what's so special about this? Everybody has been through this. And to me, that is what was special, the fact that everybody has been through it, So I don't think there are parts of your life that will always be different to others, but I think one of the enjoyable experiences is having that shared humanity with other people, and people reading it and going, ah, I did that, I remember going through that, you know.
Right. So, and also, CJ, when was the turning point you realized that, this is something which you want to take it up as a profession? Because a lot of people ultimately they say, oh, because you are a renowned motivational speaker, corporate coach, an executive coach, and of course your TEDx talk was a super hit. You've given Josh talks, you've given a whole lot of talks. You are invited to speak on various platforms. So,
I
but when
think
was it that you realized that you can convert this into your profession full time?
I think, Major, it's not something you realize. It's something that your bank balance makes you realize. You know, when you start getting paid enough to be able to not do other things, that's when you can call yourself a professional. That being said, I still think of it as a hobby. I've never thought of comedy as work. You know, I'm enjoying myself. Uh, could I be far more quote unquote successful in the traditional sense? Definitely, you know, but I'm not hardworking enough. And at this point in life, I'm not hungry enough. And I think the things that I value are slightly different. So I could be sitting in Los Angeles shooting a sitcom, you know, but every morning I go and have a coffee with my father at the local cafe. So for me, that is far more meaningful and important than shooting as many comedy specials or performing on fancy stages. So yeah, I think what's really important is to define your own version of happiness or success, whatever that might be. Too often we end up chasing definitions that have been made by other people or by society, and we end up, so to say, successful in their books, but not very happy ourselves. So I think uh, what's really important to me is to find the joy, and for a lot of that joy for me is human interaction. It's being able to spend time with people I love and having wonderful conversations. You know, I really value that.
Absolutely. There's a beautiful comment from Colonel Raghav. In fact,
Yeah.
Colonel Raghav had invited you to on his show. Wonderful early
Yes.
and welcome, Papa CJ. Great conversation. Thank you, sir. So, Colonel Raghav and I were colleagues in a company called Rolta Thales Limited. And so, look at the coincidence, CJ. I saw your conversation with Colonel Raghav, and a
Yeah.
couple of days after that,
Uh,
as luck would have it, I get the honor and the opportunity to meet you at a function again, where I had the honor, not just that, of performing before you. I did Zodiac
Absolutely.
if, and you
Yes,
were
of
the person
course.
giving energy from there. You were giving the response from there. I was like very happy. They
Yeah,
absolutely
you were fabulous. Your delivery was superb, and you've got your voice. Oh my God, the character is just booming voice. Too good.
very Laurentian after all. Never give in. There was, I will quickly conclude by saying there was a school, a friend of mine from Lovedale,
Yeah,
Adnan Nalwala, and
yeah,
he
yeah,
was brilliant in comedy, brilliant. So we
yeah,
always joke with us, and so we told Adnan, Addy, you should become a stand-up comedian, dude.
yeah.
And he took it up seriously, and now he is doing well. I mean, he is based in the Gulf, of course,
He's
and he
he's
has
a
to start.
he's a friend of mine. I've performed with him in Dubai.
Oh, Addy, this is for you. And I would be sending you this to Addy in any case. Addy, look at this, yeah, small world. And did you and Addy connect on the Laurentian note at all?
Not at all. I didn't even know that about him.
Now you
Or
know.
if I did, I forgot. But yeah, I don't think I even knew that about him.
Addy, and Addy used to keep saying, guys, just take it. Ding, 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 ding. Addy was a very funny guy, yeah, great. So,
Yeah.
CJ, it was wonderful, such a wonderful being in conversation with you. And any message you would like to give to our viewers who love you, who are big fans of yours, who watch your videos repeatedly? I'm one of them. So,
I would just say thank you so much for your love and support. I really, really appreciate it. And I will try and keep giving you more of the things that you enjoy.
thank you, CJ. Thank you very much for spending time for us. And truly grateful to you. And you are fabulous, bhai. You are really fabulous. You
You're too
really are.
kind, sir. You're too
नहीं
kind,
नहीं
Major.
और
Thank
ये
you so much for your
और ये
time.
लॉरेंशियन वाली बात पे नहीं कह रहा मैं आई जनरली मीन इट यू We love you all, CJ. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All the best. Bye bye.
Bye, CJ. End this broadcast.